Hi, that's Chris. He's a 5-year-old black boy that aspires to be a jazz player. He loves jazz and he feels enthusiastic whenever he plays. However, that's how a character that looks like him is portrayed in a TV show.
Boats coming down the river.
Years later, Chris gave up on being a jazz player. Chris is one of 6 out of 10 black individuals that gave up on the aspirations because of bad representation in media. Now, what would happen if Chris saw this movie instead, at the same age and time period? The difference between both of them is very clear. One contains adequate racial representation, and the other not. Over the years, racial representation has been a major problem, either because of the lack of it or because of its poor portrayal, and its effects towards a younger audience is extremely damaging.
When I see stereotypes and it feels like I'm being thrown into a box. And they don't get to know you and they feel like they already know who you are, but they don't listen, and we need people to listen.
Adult, we have less of a perspective of how it affects us because we've already formed our identity. We have our community, we have those supports, ideally. But someone who might be like a teenager or younger, they're kind of like a sponge. So they absorb all this information, they take it in. It's more like a personal effect on them.
Seeing black characters portrayed on the screen in a negative light makes me feel that that's a reflection of me, like the worst that I can be. It makes me feel as if that's who I may be or who I might be, like deep down on the inside. Although I know that I may not act like that, I may not be like that.
I feel like people misunderstand me and they don't know who I really am and who and what my culture is really like, and they have false misconceptions about what type of person I am.
This topic has not received its deserved attention, and increasingly, the process of adding adequate racial representation in media is slower each day. Starting in the 1940s, Mamie Clark and Kenneth Clark, a couple of psychologists at Howard University, surveyed 253 black children, ranging in the age from 3 to 7, with the purpose of determining whether children understand and express the concept of race. The test consisted in showing 4 identical dolls, except for the color, and children had to identify both the race of the dolls and which color they preferred.
Kenneth Clark, famous social psychologist, African American, from Harlem, who pioneered this way of studying the effects of segregation upon school children. And his most famous test was the doll test.
As mentioned before, the media itself has a huge impact in our mental health and self-esteem, and how things are marketed can really change the perception of who we are as a person.
So it's all connected. Like you watch one video on TikTok and then you like it and it's all of a sudden like tracked. That's who you are. That's who your cell phone thinks you are.
Now, you can argue that those tests were done years ago, and we have made room for a lot of progress. And yes, you're partially correct. We have definitely improved a lot in terms of black representation in media.
It feels nice to be represented and to think that when I see them that I can be able to get to that level or I can get that opportunity, because most of the time black people have to work 2 times harder than, let's say, like white people to get an opportunity or just to fight for an opportunity.
It's definitely amazing to see that and see the reactions of the young children. For the most part, I don't think that kids have the ability to kind of realize the monumental change that happened. Despite the amazing progress, not everything has changed to the point it should be. In 2021, Dr. Tony Sturdivant, an assistant professor at Texas A&M College, conducted a new version of the doll test 6 decades after the original one by altering its procedure. Now, the dolls were varied by placing in Latina, Asian, and other kinds of dolls, and instead of asking which doll was a bad doll, the assistant just placed the dolls for the children to choose. As a result, they were primarily similar as 6 decades ago.
It creates what Dr. Kobe Kanban referred to as a cultural misorientation, right? That misorientation is an internalization, essentially, of our idea of inferiority.
The role of mental health professionals in equality programs is essential. By allowing organizations like the Association of Black Psychologists and MSP to speak in our school environment, in our county, and other states, positive thoughts will be implemented in the minds of
The
children.
Association of Black Psychologists is basically grounded in the mission of liberating the African mind, of empowering the African character, and enlivening and illuminating the African spirit.
We focus on creating diversity and inclusion within our schools. It's all the way from high school even to elementary schools. It's a lot about inclusion and kind of breaking the opportunity gap within Montgomery County.
Now, if I was elected a member of Congress, since my first day, implementing those kinds of organizations in schools would be my priority, because I do believe the government should aspire and worry for our younger ones in order for them to grow up as stable adults who have a greater understanding on why race and media matters.